My name is Abraham, and I'm 16 years old. You might think that my name is quite old-fashioned, and there's a reason for that. I'm Amish. I was born in a village in Pennsylvania to a loving mom named Hannah and a strict father named Isaac. I have 10 other siblings, and even though we lived a simple lifestyle, we were quite happy. Before I continue my story, please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. If you want to make sure that you don't miss out on any more exciting stories, make sure you hit the notification bell. We don't have electricity, running water, or the internet. It was strictly prohibited for us to ride in cars, trains, and buses, so I had no idea what that was like. We couldn't have cameras, and photos were also forbidden, so we didn't even have a family portrait. But we still had fun. After I finished my chores, I usually met up with the other guys my age and we played baseball. This was our favorite sport, and we were really good at it. This was how it went every single day, and I was happy. Until my closest friend, Joseph, returned from a trip to the city. I had never left our village, and I had no idea what it was like out there. I had only heard that the people who lived outside were vile sinners, and that we were special and set apart. Abraham, the city is fascinating. There were lights everywhere, even at midnight, and they don't even use kerosene lamps. It's called electricity. There are huge stores where they sell all kinds of food, supermarkets. There were so many foods there I hadn't tried before. Here, I brought some back for you. They're called Cheetos, he said while handing me a bag. I opened it and tried one. Ew, I said. Well, never mind. There must be other snacks you'll enjoy. Apart from what I told you, there's so much more. I think you should go one day to experience it all, he continued. I knew I had an aunt who moved away from the village and lived in the city. My parents had told me that if I ever wanted to experience life outside, they'd arrange for me to stay with her for a while, and that they'd allow me to make my own decision about how and where I wanted to live when I became an adult. That night, I decided to have the conversation with my parents. Mother, father, I think it's time, I said. Time for what? My mom answered. I want to experience life in the city. Can I go stay with my aunt? I asked. Certainly not, my father replied. But you said I could go when I was ready. Why have you changed your mind? I asked. I'll speak to your mother and we'll let you our decision tomorrow. Now, go to bed. You have to wake up early, he said. I walked away sadly, got changed for bed, and went to sleep. The next day, my parents seemed to have forgotten our deal. I went up to them to ask again. Have you decided yet? Can I go stay with my aunt for a while? We decided to let you stay there during the week, but you have to come home on weekends. You will have lots of chores to catch up on, and you can't leave your brothers and sisters with that burden, my dad said. You can start packing, and you'll leave tomorrow around midday. We'll take you there, my mom smiled. I packed immediately and went to tell Joseph the good news. The next day, we left for the city in our buggy. On the main road, I could see many fancy cars, and the drivers stared at us curiously. When we got to my aunt's house, she was already waiting for me outside. Abraham, welcome, she said. My parents didn't talk to her. They just waved and let me walk to her door. I found out later that they didn't really like her because she'd left the village. But they'd sent a messenger to her yesterday to let her know I was coming. It's nice to meet you, Aunt Miriam. Thank you for accepting me into your home, even though I'm practically a stranger, I said. I'm so happy to meet you. I've always wanted to meet my nieces and nephews. Let me show you around the house, she said. Everything was so modern and fascinating. I had a bed, felt awesome. It took about 2 days to get all settled in, and I was just getting used to my new routine of waking up, eating breakfast, then watching television for 6 hours and going back to sleep, when my aunt came to me with some disturbing news. I've registered you in a nearby high school. You start tomorrow. But first we need to buy you some ordinary clothes, she said. I gasped. I have to go to school? With other kids my age who aren't Amish? I thought I could just stay here and watch TV. Your education is important. Now stop being silly. Let's go shopping, she replied. We went to a shopping mall, which was the biggest place I'd ever seen. We bought lots of stuff, and I tasted the most delicious thing in existence. Pizza. The next day, my aunt drove me to school, and as we approached the huge building, which was very different from my school in the village, I felt like I just wanted to become invisible. I walked into the hallway and felt lost. I was overwhelmed, and I couldn't find my first class. So I found a random bench, sat down, and buried my head in my hands. After a few minutes, I felt a light tap on my shoulder. "Hey, what's wrong? Are you okay?" a beautiful voice asked. I lifted my head and found myself staring into the most hypnotizing eyes I had ever seen. I said, speechless. "I'm Sandrina. I don't think I've ever seen you around here before," she said. "Yeah, I just moved here. Actually, I'm quite lost. I don't even know where my first class is," I replied. "Oh, let me see your schedule. Ah, we're in the same class, it seems. Come with me. I'll show you where it is," she said. "Thanks. I'm Abraham, by the way," I said. She smiled. We walked through the crowd, and I felt so much safer. We got to class, and she introduced me to some of her friends. My day was pretty interesting. The teachers seemed cool, and my classmates weren't that bad. No one could tell that my upbringing was extremely different from theirs. That was comforting in a way because I wouldn't end up feeling like an outsider. When I got to my aunt's house later, I was super excited about going back to school the next day. "How was your first day?" my aunt asked. "It was awesome. Well, it was scary at first, but I think I fit right in. But I think I want a cell phone." So then I said, "Well, how about getting a part-time job so you can buy your own stuff?" she replied. That week was wonderful because Sandrina made a great effort to be my friend. She invited me wherever she was going with her friends. They didn't laugh at me when I seemed to not get all the pop culture references. In fact, they probably thought I was joking. On Friday afternoon, Sandrina invited me over to her house for a movie night with her friends. She said she'd meet me at home and we'd go there together. I gave her the directions to my aunt's house, and later she picked me up in a really expensive-looking car. "Whoa, I didn't even know that you could drive. Wow," I said. Yeah, I can. My dad bought me this car as soon as I got my license," she smiled. When we got to her house, I was shocked. It was a mansion. I had never seen anything like it. I was convinced that everyone from my village could fit in. She was rich. I wondered how she'd feel about me if she knew how I really lived. Would she look down on me because my family and I lived a very simple life? I suddenly felt so small. When I went back to the village that weekend, I had so many stories to tell my friends and siblings. I couldn't wait to get back to my aunt's house for the new exciting week of life outside my village. The next week, my aunt helped me to find a job at a local pizzeria. I was already fascinated by pizza, so I really enjoyed working there. Sandrina and I began to spend more time alone with each other, too. I spent a lot of time at her house, and it was just like being in a hotel. She taught me lots of new things, which I pretended to know already. We went to Chinese, Italian, and Indian restaurants, and I learned about many new exciting flavors. She paid most of the time because she had more money. One afternoon, while we were taking a stroll, she said, "Can you tell that I like you more than I like other guys?" What do you mean?" I asked. "I mean, I really like you, in like a romantic sort of way," she said. I told her that I felt the same way about her, and I asked her if she'd like to be my girlfriend. She said yes. We continued going on dates, but I had to create elaborate lies about why I'd never be able to go out with her on the weekends. After working for a few months, I finally had enough money to buy a cell phone and a new MacBook. I had so much fun learning how to use them. My relationship with Sandrina continued to grow, too. We were totally in love and decided that after leaving high school, we'd go to the same college so that we could be together. I wasn't so sure about this, though, but I just pretended to be sure so that she wouldn't be suspicious. How would I even afford college? I wasn't rich like she was. Then, things took an awkward turn. We weren't allowed to have any electronic devices in my village, so when I went back, I usually left my phone and MacBook at my aunt's house. One weekend, I decided to take my phone because I really wanted to talk to Sandrina. But when I got to the village, my dad seemed to be in a bad mood, and he started giving me a long list of chores I had to complete before the end of the day. I hid my phone in my pocket and got straight to work. I was somewhere on the farm harvesting some corn when I felt a huge whack on the back of my head. "Thief!" I heard a voice scream. I turned around, and there was Sandrina, staring at me like she'd just seen a ghost. "Oh my God, I didn't know it was you. What are you doing here, on an Amish settlement? Why are you wearing these clothes?" I thought someone had stolen your phone because you weren't replying to any of my messages. I used your MacBook to track your phone, and it led me here. What are you doing here? She said. I'm so sorry, Sandrina, I sighed. Why are you sorry? For not replying to my messages? Or for disappearing to the middle of nowhere? She asked. Suddenly, I heard a rough, harsh voice. What is she doing here? In these clothes? They are inappropriate. What are you doing in the cornfield alone with a woman? It was my dad. Gosh, this just keeps getting better, I thought. Come with me, I said to Sandrina and took her hand, completely ignoring my dad. I led her to my favorite spot near a little lake. I explained the truth to her, that I was raised in an Amish village and this was where I really lived. Aw, so that's why you disappeared on weekends. It makes so much more sense now, she said. And I was relieved that she wasn't upset. I'm sure you don't want to be with me anymore now that you know the truth, I sighed. No, I love you. I don't care that you're from here. I just wish you had been honest with me from the beginning. I wouldn't have judged you, she replied. I walked her to the entrance of the village where her car was parked. Some children were staring at it curiously. See you next week, Abraham, she said, and we kissed goodbye. When I turned around to walk back in, I saw my entire family staring at me. My mom and dad stared with their jaws dropped to the ground. Did you just kiss that girl? What is your problem? My dad asked. She's my girlfriend. We're in love, I said. No, you are not allowed to marry an outsider. You've allowed the outside world to corrupt you, and I won't have it. You won't be going back to your aunt's house ever, and you will never see that girl again, my dad shouted while my mom started crying. I was so angry that I surprised myself. How dare they dictate to me what I should or shouldn't do with my life? It was my life. I went straight to my room, packed a bag, and walked out of the house. Get back here. You haven't finished your work, my dad said. You can finish it yourself. I'm done with all of you, I replied. I walked away from the village and never turned back. I walked for almost an hour to my aunt's house where I told her everything that happened to me. After that, it wasn't very easy. My parents tried to fight to get me back, but I refused to return. Eventually, they just left me alone. It was clear that they would never accept Sandrina, but I wanted to be with her more than I wanted anything else in the world. I decided not to move back to the village, ever, and to pursue my dream of building a life with my perfect girlfriend. Right now, we go to the same college. My aunt helped me to get a loan so that I could finish my undergraduate degree. Sandrina and I are planning to get married as soon as we graduate. I'm so happy that she found me that day I was so lonely in the hallway. She totally changed my life.